Susan Boyle became super successful after her amazing tryout on Britain's Got Talent. At first, she wasn't everyone's favorite, but her powerful voice changed everything. She had a great career, winning America's Got Talent, The Champions, and her money went over $45 million. Then she suddenly disappeared from everyone's view. Join us as we find out what happened to the singer and more about her story. Susan Boyle is living proof that you should never judge a book by its cover. Susan Boyle was born on April 1st, 1961. Her father, Patrick Boyle, was a miner and won too and sang, while her mother, Bridget Boyle, worked as a shorthand typist. Susan has 4 older brothers and 6 older sisters and grew up in a council house in West Lothian in Scotland, where she still lives. Rejected at school, the only thing that Susan felt some peace with was her love for music. She was a choir member of her church, and also used to join actively in the local talent searches and competed successfully. Her mother told her to try out for Britain's Got Talent. But Susan thought she was too old, so she dropped the idea, though nice to watch on television. Susan could not try out when it started in 2004, but after her mother died in 2007, she finally tried out in 2008. She had been a caregiver for her sick mother until the mother's death. She'd not performed in public until this time during the show Britain's Got Talent, held in Glasgow. Susanna amazed the judges and the viewers with her singing cover of I Dreamed a Dream, the chorus of which got a standing ovation. Amanda Holden said it was the biggest wake-up call ever, as she continues to point to people looking down on her because of her looks later, better known as Susan Boyle. Famous people, such as Demi Moore and Ashton Kutcher, started tweeting to support her after getting success. Worldwide, her tryout video went viral on YouTube, getting the most views out of any YouTube video. Although she finished second in the competition and faced dearly challenges because of tiredness, Susan began her new life as an artist, joining her fellow contestants on tour and working on her first album, Susan's Story. Inspired many, showing that dreams can come true at any age. Her first album, I Dreamed a Dream, came out in November 2009, broke sales records, selling over 2 million copies worldwide in its first week. It stays the fastest-selling first album by a female artist ever recorded from the start. Susan's dream seemed as far away as the stars. She was the youngest of 6 sisters and 4 brothers born when her mother Bridget was 47 and had little money to care for another child. The birth process was almost life-threatening, and Susan was briefly without oxygen, which led to her learning problems, or so she was told. Later, at the top of her career, she found out something totally new about her condition. The school was a tough experience for Susan. She was constantly bullied by classmates and teachers alike. In a heartfelt interview, she shared how hard it was to keep up in a system that valued speed and quick learning. She said, "I was a slow learner. I'm just a little slower at picking things up than others, so you get left behind in a system that wants to rush on. That was what I felt was happening to me." Her teachers harshly punished her with a belt when she struggled. In school, her classmates nicknamed her Susie Simple and constantly insulted her, making school the worst time of her life. Bullying and hitting stunted her self-growth and created more blocks in her school journey. Taking the stage in Britain's Got Talent was Susan's quiet way of proving her bullies wrong, showing she could do something great despite their meanness. Her performance was a sweet payback, she later wrote and performed. You'll see on her first album a song reminding her bullies that she made it despite their cruelty. However, her path wasn't easy. In 2011, Susan told about a sad part of her childhood. Apart from the unknown learning disorder, she also had epilepsy. The doctors had given the right diagnosis, but those who were close to Susan, her parents and teachers, couldn't deal with the epileptic condition. The doctors had made a right diagnosis, but her parents and teachers didn't know how to handle Susan's epilepsy. This condition isn't unknown among musicians. Sir Elton John, Neil Young, and Lil Wayne also suffer from epilepsy. However, in Susan's case, the diagnosis was badly mishandled. She remembered having seizures at school regularly, which gave more ammunition for her bullies. She would faint during lessons, and when she woke up, her classmates would gather around, call her names, and laugh at her. At home, things weren't much better. Her parents would overprotect her during episodes, and if the problem became too troublesome, they would leave her to take care of herself. When she asked for extra help, her father would call her touchy. The general assumption was that Susan's epilepsy was connected to her learning problems, which wasn't the case, so the condition went untreated. It is no surprise that Susan finished school with few qualifications. She had trouble finding a job because of her lack of qualifications and undiagnosed learning disability. According to Susan, she applied to many places, but either didn't get a call back or failed after her first interview. She finally got a job as a trainee cook at West Lothian College, which lasted only 6 months mostly. She had to move from one government training program to another, without a stable job or enough income. Despite these challenges, she found joy and comfort in performing at local venues, which was the extent of her musical career until a tragic loss pushed her to go after a dream she hadn't dared to. Before, despite having a tough family life, Susan Boyle believed in forgiving and selflessness. She didn't have much growing up, and wasn't a romantic, famously saying during her Britain's Got Talent time, never been married, never been kissed. Her modesty and goodness led to big life decisions after her father's passing. All her siblings eventually left their 4-bedroom council house, leaving behind their old, sick, and weak mother. Only Susan and her 10-year-old cat Pebbles stayed even after becoming a world-class musical artist and earning millions. Susan still lives in her childhood home, embracing the simple life. A neighbor mentioned that when her mother, Bridget Boyle, died, Susan wouldn't come out for 3 or 4 days or answer the door or phone. Susan is a practicing Roman Catholic, singing in her church choir and volunteering by visiting elderly members of the congregation in their homes. She described her life as boring and routine before stardom. During a 2010 episode of The Oprah Winfrey Show in 2012, Susan was diagnosed with Asperger syndrome and made this public in a BBC interview in December 2013. She also has epilepsy. In November 2012, when asked about internet dating, she joked that she was too scared, saying, "Knowing my luck, I'd go out on a date and you'd find my limbs scattered around various Blackburn dustbins." In July 2013, Susan supported the Better Together campaign to keep Scotland as part of the United Kingdom in the 2014 independence referendum. She stated, "I am a proud patriotic Scot, passionate about my heritage and country, but I am not a nationalist." She added, "We have kept to her proud identity while being a part of Britain." Susan doesn't drink, and she's a type 2 diabetes patient who was first diagnosed in June 2013 and November 2014. The media reported that she had a boyfriend who often claimed to be her first boyfriend, and they were almost the same age. She suffered a small stroke in 2022, and later shared this during an episode on June 4, 2023, after a Britain's Got Talent show. What do you think motivates Susan Boyle to stay in her childhood home till today? In Britain's Got Talent, despite her kind-looking face, Susan Boyle's looks were ignored, since she had no fancy clothes, but her beautiful voice amazed everyone, including the judges. The change from the terrible scenes of bullying to the one where she gets a standing ovation before, during, and after her performance got attention worldwide. Susan's tryout went viral in a week, and the clip that showed her was watched over 100 million times. Compilations of her earlier performances, such as her 1999 Cry Me a River performance, went viral. Susan faced the challenges of sickness and tiredness throughout the show. Still, she made an excellent final standing for which she eventually came second only to the dance group Diversity. However, she'd won the most important battle of her life. The government adopted defense spending to meet public approval. Because of the events shown in Susan's show, many people realized people should never give up on their dreams, no matter how old they are. Her first album, I Dreamed a Dream, was released in November 2009 and was a crushing success. It became one of the fastest-selling first albums by a female artist. It sold more than 2 million worldwide in the first week of its launch and became the record breaker in UK sales. It also hit the feature of becoming the most sold album in the pre-sales from Amazon. The album's success was obvious, and I Dreamed a Dream was able to claim its place as the biggest-selling record in the world in the year of its release, with over 9 million copies sold. Billboard News proved this as charting the highest first-week sales for a beginner female artist's album as recorded by SoundScan in 1991. In the aftermath of this success, Susan Boyle set a Guinness record for the fastest-selling first album of a female artist, the record for the highest first-week sales, and the record for the oldest person to reach the highest record for a first album in the United Kingdom. Susan's big voice and inspiring story reached worldwide, particularly in America. She appeared on America's Got Talent, where she was warmly welcomed. Gone were the days of being put down. Susan embraced her success and was no longer afraid. Instead of being a watcher in her own life, she truly embraced the world around her. Susan wasn't a role in enjoying her life as the main character. Following the success of her first album, she released 2 more, The Gift in 2010 and Someone to Watch Over Me. In 2011, after a brief break, she returned with a festive album, Standing Ovation, the greatest songs from the stage. In 2012, 2 years later, she released another groundbreaking record, Hope, followed by A Wonderful World in 2016. After consistently working on her music, Susan took an indefinite break because of old age and other health issues. Many thought her music career was over, but Susan surprised her fans in 2019 by celebrating a decade with an album titled 10, which captured the very best of her work. Once again, she beat all odds and made her mark on the music industry. However, with her wins came sadness. Susan's loyal fans couldn't help but notice that her heartbreaking diagnosis had changed her drastically. Despite having much tougher, she now prefers to live a quiet life, far from the glitz and glamour beneath her huge success. There is a hint of tragedy. Susan reflected on her work, saying, "I had a lot of fun making the album, and I hope that the public likes it as much as I enjoyed it." If you thought Susan Boyle's success story was surprising, brace yourself, because we are about to reveal heartbreaking truths that will change everything. You thought you knew about her journey. Could these truths reshape how you view Susan's story? Let's find out. Britain's Got Talent had put Susan Boyle at the top of the world, but the extensive and tough training routine exhausted her while she was happy. With her singing, fame was new following her appearance on the show. She struggled to keep up with the demanding routine of interviews, smiling for the paparazzi, and dealing with harsh and rude critics. Although Susan's reputation came before her, she did not win the show, and right after the finale, she had to be admitted to the hospital. The media scrutiny over 5 weeks had worn her out, and she was physically becoming weak. Later, it was revealed that Susan had suffered a breakdown. Despite being exceptionally talented, she failed to get enough public votes, which led her to lash out at the show's manager. Rumors from the set revealed that Susan had thrown water at a staff member while yelling that she hated the show. That night, the staff at her London home called the police because of her strange behavior. A few hours later, Susan had to be admitted to a mental health care facility. The news of her breakdown spread quickly, and it was revealed that the producers of Britain's Got Talent had ignored Susan's fragile mental and physical health. Leading up to the final, the United Kingdom's media regulator of Ofcom wanted to start an inquiry into the show for prioritizing ratings over participants' health, but the idea was later dropped. This experience taught Susan to take her music schedule more lightly, but it wasn't possible, as she had a challenging touring timetable ahead. Despite this, she performed wonderfully for her fans while working on her music. Susan suffered another setback in her career in 2013 when she finally got an accurate diagnosis of her learning disability. Interestingly, though, there was no actual brain damage. It was a wrong diagnosis that was made. Concerning her young self, the singer was diagnosed with Asperger's, which is a type of autism spectrum disorder. Hearing such a revelation was heartbreaking, but on the other hand, it was fortunate as well. 4 years Susan had believed that a minor complication at birth had caused her permanent damage. Reflecting on her school years, she thought of herself as unlucky. However, the Asperger's diagnosis allowed her to receive the proper treatment for the first time in her life. In an interview with The Guardian, Susan revealed that being labeled as brain damaged always felt cruel and unfair. Deep down, she knew she was like everyone else, but had her way of doing things. She also hoped her diagnosis would encourage people to treat neurodivergent individuals more kindly. She stated, "I think people will treat me better because they will have a much greater understanding of who I am and why I do what I do." After the brave disclosures, Susan got lots of support from fans and critics. People appreciated her authenticity and honesty about her life experiences, a trait that many celebrities shy away from. If this wasn't enough, Susan was forced to give up heroinly vice. In the same year, her love for eating chocolate. This became complicated when she was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. Though the diagnosis was timely, Susan had to deal with a new lifestyle while still adjusting to autism. Later, when the pandemic hit, she had to take extra measures to protect herself from the contagious COVID-19 virus, causing another split in her musical career. For at least 1.2 years, she had to stay home and avoid interacting with people who could have helped her record another groundbreaking album. Susan's life was not just about public support and successful albums. Things were bad at home too. In 2010, she bought herself a house with her earnings, but a group of troublemakers made her life miserable by throwing rocks, trying to break in, and throwing firework paper at her house. Eventually, she returned to her childhood home and gave her fancy house to her niece. She was generally sad about these experiences, but her sister's sickness led Susan to take a brief break before her 2015 comeback. Her sister Bridie had lost her life to cancer at the age of 73, and since she was closest to Susan, her passing left Susan emotionally upset. Additionally, Susan had to take care of Bridie's daughter after Susan's explosive success. Bri had been a supportive sister. In many ways, she stood by Susan when the media scrutinized her for random things like her appearance, and kept her ground. Founded when success followed her everywhere, Bri was Susan's keeper during her ugly fight with their brother Jerry. Susan's success meant she had millions in her bank account, and everyone, including her siblings, wanted a piece of that. The issue arose When Susan decided to help Jerry by giving him 75 0 to save his failing business, when her other siblings took issue with this, Susan claimed that Jerry had threatened to commit suicide if she didn't give him the check. This caused a fight between them, and Jerry publicly accused Susan of lying. However, in 2016, Susan's public breakdown at Heathrow Airport would reunite the siblings, providing a heartwarming ending to their fight. Unfortunately, Susan Boyle's health issues have not stopped. In May 2022, it became known that she had a minor stroke and therefore found it even more challenging to work on music. She delivered this touching news after a great performance on Britain's Got Talent stage, where she gets to sing with the West End cast of Les Miserables, an event that was so touching for her. Susan expressed that it was significant to return to the stage after her stroke, saying, "Last April I suffered a minor stroke and I thought it would be crazy to be back on stage, but I've done it." That night she took to Instagram to tell her followers that she had to undergo extensive speech practice to perform her beloved song, "I Dreamed a Dream." Her hard work paid off, and today she continues pursuing her musical career, despite various health challenges, despite the stroke that delayed her plans for new music. The amazing Susan Boyle still performs for her fans whenever she has the will and energy to do so, though she largely stays away from the public eye. Recently, Susan has cited not having children as one of her biggest regrets. Still, she does have a secret life involving an American boy whose identity remains unknown even to the most interested media circles. In 2016, she mentioned to the Mirror that she was casually chatting with an American doctor, but they were not serious then. Since then, media reports indicate that Susan is now in a happy, stable relationship. However, she has no plans to tell about her partner publicly or to get married. Her boyfriend does accompany her on special occasions like her birthday, but that is all that is known about her love life. Before her major appearance on the show, her fans were eager for new music. Susan Boyle remains a gift that keeps on giving, and while we wait patiently for her next musical venture,